Hi guys, so I'm after getting my hands here on Irish paper 1, so I said I'd have a little run through the paper with you here to kind of give you some feedback on how I felt it went. So if we jump straight into the Clustishkent here, section A was about a job. It was quite straightforward, to be honest. They were asking what type of job was needed. The word you were looking for there was a law or was a presenter, a sports presenter. The questions after that asked for two aspects that will be discussed for question 2. For question 3, Cáiliúcht is a qualification. If you've done any type of classes with me before, I said to you that Gaeilge Líofa is nearly always the qualification that is needed. In this case it says Líofacht sa Gaeilge, which is fluency in Irish. Same thing as Gaeilge Líofa, just said in a different way, so it came up. And finally you were asked for a date. What's the last date that you can apply for something? Nice, simple opening really to section A. Fógra Dó was about Untitled. It was a little bit harder. It was about the environment. It was all about an action day for climate change. So the first question was what day was being organised. Then what was the theme of the day? That was obviously in the Donegal accent, so it was a little bit trickier. It was about how we could lower our carbon output in the school. The question 2 was what was the title of the film? Or Blaned in Whale, Our Planet in Danger was the title of the film. And finally it asked you a couple of things that will be discussed as part of these classes, the different classes throughout the day. There was loads of things that could be said. There was things like aquasol, kuramubia, recycling, wasting of food, that type of stuff. But the first questions A and B there, Fógra Dó, were a little bit harder, as opposed to 2 and 3 were that little bit easier. I would expect people to get 2 and 3, whereas A and B might be a little bit trickier, so don't worry if you found them hard. Could be Cora Hain was pretty much about the life of a teenager, it's about a driving test here as such. So it was what was the good news that Sean gave to Kira, that he had passed his driving test. They were happy with that. 2, when was her birthday? A lot of people would have been expecting an actual date there, but she said Kaiki Shohin, which is a fortnight ago, so that was a little bit tricky. After that then it was what was the reason that Sean would recommend his driving instructor to her, and it says Vínig sé gachrúd go sular. He explained everything clearly, so nothing overly difficult there to open that up. On Daramir, the second sequence, it was why Sean wouldn't be able to keep her car on the road himself. On Toricus is insurance, it's too expensive for Chusasuk. Agus Frice and Vrosla, the cost of petrol, the cost of diesel is Ig Ordu and Tomerfod is rising all the time. You might have had that anyway if you had an essay about the cost of living in Ireland done this year. One reason that there wasn't any need for Sean to have a car in university, it's that there's a Lewis station and that there's a regular bus service beside his accommodation, so that was fine. And 3, why is Kira looking forward to having her own car? And the word there they wanted was Njavsblok is independence. She would have independence from her parents, wouldn't be relying on them. As section B goes, Corahane, that was okay, that was quite nice, apart from maybe the word Njavsblok or Price and Vrosla might have been tricky. The rest of that there was okay, the language would have been quite accessible for most. Cora Dó, there was less questions in it really, because they wanted 2 things for Daramir for both questions. So it was why does Moira go to Cork to shop all the time, and she says her favourite clothes shops are there. What did she buy a coat at Darahor? It's a designer coat. And then Paul said something about charity shops. The thing that Paul said about the charity shops was that there's good value, there's good deals to be gotten there. Then we get to the second sequence and it says 2 advantages about shopping online. You could probably guess them in English here if you wanted to, so we have to put Irish on them. It's that Paul said he can buy them from his house anytime he wants without having to leave. Egsúlacht was a word he used there. It's a variety, the choice of clothes. And finally, number 3, he said Tugging the Barton 80, the piles of clothes or the packages come straight to his door. He doesn't have to move at all. So that's what he said. And the last question was 2 reasons that Moira had to send the jumpers back that she didn't like. They had unveiled is the size, she had the wrong size on them, and then the second thing she didn't like on Taduk is the material. So they were the 2 things she said there. Again, if you didn't know those 2 words for section on Daramir, question 2, if you didn't know the words like for size or the material, they may have been tricky, but if you could hear them, it's really, really simple. They're only 1-word answers as such. On to section C, part 1 was about the housing crisis five tíochta. So when did the government release the policy? It was last September. What was the aim of the policies? Dulling Lekle means to tackle or to face the housing crisis. Gercame tíochta. Number 3, question 3 was 2 worthwhile results that the government believe will come from all this action. That it'll be the end to Asta Didina Fimlin Fihitruka. So they're hoping to end the problem of homelessness by the year 2030, and that we'll have a Suki Nís Currama, a more equal and more fair society. And again, a lot of people would have been hoping for an essay this year on the housing crisis, but that's all the vocab there on the housing crisis. So if you knew an essay on that, I think you'd be okay. If you didn't know your essay on that, that would have been tricky. So part 2 was about kind of film and about this particular person, Donal. So why did he get recognition for the Irish film he was in? It was because of his Cumas Ashtorachta, because of his acting ability. Number 2 is when was it set? Treisha means a period of time. It was Lenin and Gertrude Moore during the famine. And the last one was one reason that he was very proud to be part of this film. There was 2 reasons that could be used. One, it was shot in his native area. He was from Indrawan, where it was shot. Or the second one, you could have said, was he had an opportunity to act through Irish, so he was very proud of that also. Again, I would have thought that C overall was nice. It was quick. That was the only thing I will say about it. The answers came quick and fast. But if you knew that vocab about Ashtorach and Gertrude Moore, it's okay. Maybe that could have caused some issues there at the end. But overall, I would have said that out of all the listings we've heard over the years, it definitely would not have been one of the harder ones. There was a couple of tricky questions, especially about the environment, but there has to be the separator H1 and H2 students. Moving on to Cheappadóireacht, the composing. The essays, I think people will be happy with the essays overall. Section, A here was the essay was Suki Nahair and Salah Tanu and Irish Society Today. So you've pretty free reign to talk about different aspects of Irish society. You could talk about alcohol and drugs. You can talk about the role of education in society. You could talk about Custas Marachtála, the cost of living, Bullshgu, inflation, Tíocht, housing, Buchtanis, Foreign, whatever you want. Really, once you had 4 maybe good paragraphs to discuss, or 2 discussed in great detail about what Irish society is like today. B. An Tunnachar Ravine ag na manho Shielta Ergrini, the impact or the influence of social media on people, not just young people, on people in general. So is it good or is it bad? You have the choice. You can have 2 pros, 2 cons. It could be all positive, all negative. Your choice there once you could fill out the word count. It wouldn't be one I would personally go for, because I think that it sounds nicer in theory than it actually is. Éireagus an Taintis Orthabhach, Ireland and the European Union. I can't imagine too many people went for that. I'm assuming that that's on the paper there, because the Irish has got a status now as a working language again within the European Union, so not overly surprised that it came up, but it would have been a difficult essay to answer on, as opposed to the first 2 probably would have been more popular. C. Sail Dina Ógan Éireann, the old trusty faithful, the life of a young person in Ireland. I say a lot of people went for that. I just hope if you did that you read the second part of the question. And will say Dulavios, no an Ulcas, is it getting better at Dulavios, or an Ulcas getting worse? So you have to decide, is it getting better or getting worse? So it's a lopsided essay as such. The life of a teenager, is it all good? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? And you have to say why it's getting better or why it's getting worse. So there's a bit of a, I suppose, an extra bit to that question. And the last one, E. Molek, or my hero. Depending on if you had an essay done on a famous person or what, I can't imagine that too many people may have done that. Again, it sounds nicer, but you would have to have 4 well-developed paragraphs on why this person was your hero. I would imagine A, B and D would have been the most popular choices there. The scale, Buikas, be thankful, or is bin bail and a hus, silence is golden. If you did the stories, of course, I recommend that people never do them, so I wouldn't have too much to say on that. The titles are easy to understand, but most people, I'd say, will not be doing them. And finally, the debate or the speech. The first one was in a diasporic school, as I say, Tugtar Kuhram na Féine de Gachtina Salat an Yuan. Everyone is equal, or the equality is given to everyone nowadays. I would personally say no, they don't. And you can talk about private health insurance, you could talk about private education, you could talk about the cost of living, the cost of housing, whatever that may be. There's plenty of reasons to say that that is not the case in Ireland today. Second one I think will be very popular with students. Chorus Idigus, we know, is the education system. So you're asked to do a speech on the education system, and it said Mohahi, my experience in the education system. So it's the education system and how you experience it. So if you were to have written an essay on education in general, you would have just changed to like things like it is believed to I believe. It is my opinion. So it was a personal take on the education system rather than writing like a newspaper article where you're trying to detach yourself from it and not give an opinion. They wanted an opinion here because it was a personal essay. If I was to guess what people went for, A, B, D, and then B in the debate, I would imagine 85% of the country will have answered on those 4 questions there. I hope you found it good, I hope you found it fair, and I hope it went well for you in the best of luck in paper 2 tomorrow. Slán go fóill.